Hello and welcome to the introduction to the final project video for LSP 120. So the first thing you're going to want to do is log into D2L and navigate your way to the final project links. So the final project in this class is going to model the basic processes of science. So for example, when I want to do a research project, if I have a question about the world in social psychology, I will develop a research project to collect some data. I'll analyze that data once I've collected it. And then once I've analyzed the data and I have learned something about my research question, I will take that and I will present that information at conferences. So I'll stand up in front of my colleagues and I'll give a presentation about the research that I have done. And then ultimately what I'll do is write that research up into a paper, which I will submit for publication at academic journals. Now the process for the final project in this class models this process of science, with the exception that I'm not going to be asking you guys to design studies or do statistical analysis, but what you will do is you will use existing data to tell a data-supported story where you will explain some pattern of data. You will try to explain some pattern of data. Okay. So the place where you will find the data for your final project, the primary source of data is going to be this US statistical abstract data. And you can get to this through ProQuest by clicking on this link here if you're on campus. If you're not on campus, the tutorial or the how to access will give you step-by-step on how to get to the US statistical abstract. Now, the US statistical abstract has a ton of information about nearly everything, right? We've got all this data down here, and then under any of these categories, there are even more subcategories of data, if my internet will work. Here we go. Tax revenues, businesses, just all of these are all individual Excel files, and there's a ton of them of data, okay? So you're going to want to start with this final project by thinking about a topic that you're kind of interested in. So for example, maybe you are interested in teenage birth rates, right? So you are really interested in, you really like the show, those shows that were on MTV about Teen Mom and Us, and you're interested in teenage birth rates. So you start looking into the teenage birth rate data. Now, I've already done a lot of this work for demonstration, but this is similar to the kind of procedure you would go through for your presentation. So let's say you look at the teenage birth rate data, and this is actual data from the US Statistical Abstract, Table 92, and you find that teenage birth rates have been decreasing pretty dramatically over the last 3 decades, let's say. So if we look at these numbers, in 1990, the birth rate was about 60 per 1,000. About 60 teenagers between the ages of, I believe it's 15 and 19, gave birth per 1,000 of the population. And this has dropped dramatically to 2014, where we have 24.2, so about 24 births to teenage mothers per 1,000 in 2014. So this is really interesting, right? There's this huge dramatic decrease in the teenage birth rate. And you might ask yourself a question at this point. You might wonder, well, why might this be? What are some reasons why the teenage birth rate might be decreasing? And this is one of the goals of this presentation. You want to find an interesting pattern of data, like this teenage birth rate decreasing, and then you want to try to explain that data, supporting it with other data, other sources of information, supporting your explanations with other sources of data. So this is why I call this a data-supported story. You're building an argument to explain to your audience why teenage birth rates are going down, and you're going to use other sources of data to bolster that argument. So for example, one reason why you might think teenage birth rates would be going down is perhaps people are using more contraception. And so if you look around in the data, you find table 108, we discover that between 2000 and 2006 and 2010, 62% of women used contraception and 38% did not use contraception. Now, this is all women, it's not teenagers, and it doesn't give us this information over time, but it does suggest that more women are using contraception than not. And that might be one reason why teenage birth rates are going down. If more women are using contraception than not, that could help to decrease the birth rate for teens. Now, notice this isn't sort of one-to-one correspondence. I don't have contraceptive use every single year the same that I have for teenage birth rates, but it provides evidence to support the argument that perhaps contraceptive use might be driving this. Now, other reasons that we might think of for why teenage birth rates might be going down, perhaps we could think of abortion rates, right? Perhaps easier access to abortion means that more teenagers are choosing to terminate their pregnancy early on, and so this is what's driving down the teenage birth rate in the United States. So we look up some data on abortion, and again, all of this is real data. We look up some data on abortion, and it turns out abortion rates have been on the decline slightly over the last 10 or so years, right? The abortion rate is staying pretty steady across all women, from about 20 down to about, what is this here? Go Excel, go! From about 20, I'd say that's probably about 17 it's right here, obviously. About 21.3 down to 17.7 per 1,000 women in the population. So we thought perhaps abortion rates might explain the decrease in teenage birth rates, right? If that were the case, we would expect abortion rates to be going up over this period of time, but they're not. So this suggests that abortion rates are not necessarily related to this drop in teenage birth rates. So it's not the case that teenagers are not having babies because they're having more abortions. And again, this is not this one-to-one correspondence, but you can see how I'm using the data to build an argument, right? Here is my interesting pattern of data. Here are some reasons why I think this pattern might be, and here are some data that speak to those reasons, either by showing that yes, this may be the cause, or no, this one is not the cause. Finally, we might also think that there are other factors at play besides, sexually related behavior, right? Perhaps education may be related to the decrease in teenage birth rates, and not sexual education, but education in general. And so I go to a different section of the U.S. Statistical Abstracts looking at education data, and I find here that high school graduation rates and college graduation rates are both increasing, and they're both increasing for both males and females, right? When we look at these lines here, we can see that both males and females are pretty much increasing at about the same rate. So one reason over the same span of time, one reason why teenage birth rates might be decreasing is because women and men are getting more educated over time. And if they're more educated, they might be more likely to delay pregnancy. Okay. So the point here is that when you are putting together this final project, you want to be telling a data-supported story. You want to find an interesting pattern of data, like our teenage birth rate data, and then you want to explain it using other sources of data to support or address points you're making in your explanation. You can think about this in terms of the 5-paragraph essay that we all learned to write in high school, right? In the 5-paragraph essay, your introductory paragraph contains your thesis statement. And in this project, your thesis statement is really your interesting pattern of data. And then you have supporting paragraphs. And each of your additional pieces of data are supporting paragraphs that help to explain that thesis statement, right? So you can think about this project in terms of that 5-paragraph essay metaphor. So if you look at the project list here, there is a project list that is available. I caution students against using this project list verbatim because this project list tends to be very descriptive, not explanatory. Notice with my teenage birth rate example, I'm trying to explain why teenage birth rates are going down and using other data to speak to my potential reasons for why this goes down. This project list tends to be more descriptive. Not why is immigration increasing or decreasing, but how is it, how is it changed? What's the ratio? What are the numbers, right? It's very descriptive. It's more addressing what questions rather than why questions. So you may use this as a topic list, but you're going to really want to focus on addressing why questions with your data. You are free to choose whatever topic you're interested in. You are free to use other sources of data besides the U.S. statistical abstract, as long as they are government sources or trustworthy sources of data. And if you're not sure if it's a trustworthy source, send me an email or talk to me in class and let me know. I'll let you know if it's trustworthy or not. So you will need to get into a group of at least 2 or 3 people for the final project. Part of the reason why I do groups is just because it takes a lot of time to give presentations, and it takes much longer for 27 people to give a presentation each than it does for 13 people or 13 groups to give presentations or 12 groups to give presentations, right? So it just takes a lot of time to get through them. And typically when I've done individual presentations in the past, students' eyes roll into the back of their heads by the time we get to about presentation 19 or 20, because it just takes a lot of time. Now, the presentation is broken up into stages. The first stage is just finding data, right? You're not actually going to be creating any graphs at this point. You're just going to be choosing a topic, coming up with a tentative title, getting your group together, and then working on, in class, finding various data tables that you can use. So you're going to need to have at least 4 of them. Now, they don't have to all necessarily come from the same subsection on U.S. statistical abstracts, right? So, for example, most of my data came from births, marriages, and divorces, but my education data came from a completely different section because I thought it was related. You're not limited by that. For each of your 4 data tables, once your group has found them, you're going to answer number 2 separately for each of them. Make sure that you do this for each of your tables. If you do it for just one of your tables, your group is going to lose points unnecessarily. And then at the end here, we have list 3 to 5 interesting questions you hope to answer for this part of the final project. These are going to be critical to your final project. You're going to want to specify, what do you hope to convey from this project? What do you hope to learn? Why are teenage birth rates going down? Could it be because education is increasing? Could it be because of this or that? Right? So this is a place to really explore those questions. Now, the stage 1 of the final project will be due according to the syllabus and the drop boxes. When you click on the Dropbox to turn in your stage 1 final project, don't forget that there is this little page 1 and 2 down here, and the final project links end up showing up here on this second page for that Dropbox. You will submit one stage 1 document for your group with all of your group members' names on it, and then I will apply that grade for everybody. So that is the introduction to the final project. As always, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns.